Thank you for tuning into the 5th episode of The Shorewood Stacks. I'm Lisa Quintero, young adult librarian.
And I am Nick Barron, patron and sometimes volunteer.
This is the show where we talk to you about what we've been reading, listening to, or watching. We also talk to you about library virtual events and what's been going on at the library. So we're going to start off with some
library news.
Yeah, we have a couple of new exciting news items. One of them is that we are now accepting curbside pickup requests through email and an online form as well. You can find the online form at shorewoodlibrary.org, or you can email us your request to shorewood@mcflitz.org. That's mcfls.org for Milwaukee County Federated Library System. We have also increased the amount of things that you could request. Originally, our limit was 5, but we are now taking requests for more items as well. We just ask that you check County Cat before you call us or email us or put your form request in to see that the item is available in Shorewood, because we are only able to fulfill requests for Shorewood items right now. So if County Cat says that an item is due back on a certain date, or that it is in repair damage status, or that it is on hold for somebody, or it is in transit, that means that it's not available for you to check out. But if it says check shelves, then you can go ahead and request it, and we can look for it and pull it for you. The other exciting piece of news is that our due dates have all been extended to June 15th of 2020. So you don't have to return your items until then, but if you do want to return your items, our book drops are still open, both when the library is open and when we are closed. So you can always drop things off, and we will continue to put them in quarantine before we put them on our shelves.
From the stacks.
So this week we're going to be talking to you about stuff we've been watching. Most of it is, actually all of it, is stuff that the Shorewood Library owns. Some of it might actually be on our shelves right now, and some of it is probably checked out. But we figured we'd talk to you a little bit about what we've been using for entertainment. We know a lot of folks are also watching a lot of things and might want some recommendations for some new things to check out. But what's been your favorite thing that we've watched so far?
Looking at the list, I'm gonna say Maleficent was definitely my favorite out of the things that we've watched so far. Out of all the things that we watched, it's probably in certain ways the heaviest, because of the subtext of the story. But it had a really great story, a really great message. It had some really dynamic action scenes as well, that kind of balanced things out. But you should probably explain a little bit about the story.
What Maleficent is, yeah. Maleficent's one of my favorites too. Maleficent came out in 2014, and it stars Angelina Jolie, and it's a Disney film, one of the adaptations that they've done with live action. It is the story of Maleficent, the villain from Sleeping Beauty, except that in this story, she is a fairy who has been mistreated by a young man who turns out to then become the King Stefan, who is Aurora's father, which is then Sleeping Beauty. And so part of the reason that Maleficent curses Aurora is because of her anger towards this man and what this man has done to her previously. And then as the story goes on, Maleficent kind of develops a bond with Aurora and wants to change things, but struggles with it. And I can't say anything else without spoiling the movie, so I won't spoil it for people. I'm notorious for spoiling things.
Lisa is notorious for spoilers.
But it is a really good movie. It's like Nick said, it has heaviness to it to some degree, but it's also something that I think you could watch with a child, that they would not understand the heavy elements of it so much and would see it just for a modernized fairy tale. One of the things that I really enjoy is in old Disney movies, the prince always saves the princess, and in this one there is a prince that comes to give Aurora her true love's kiss, and when he comes to kiss her, a lot of the fairies are like, kiss her, and he's like, this feels weird, she's like sleeping, like why would I kiss her, like this is uncomfortable.
Yeah, this isn't right.
This isn't right. And I think that it's a good modern adaptation with good messages for young people today. So
yeah, and on top of that, when I was mentioning the action sequences, I play a lot of a game called Warhammer, which is very similar to a number of different like computer games like Warcraft or things like that. And there is some really great scenes where the dryads and other forest creatures are at war with the humans, and it is really good like depictions of fantasy battle. Not too heavy, it's not like Game of Thrones or anything. It's a Disney movie, but at the same time, it's dynamic, and I enjoyed it.
Yeah,
So it balances out some of the other aspects of the movie.
Yeah, you were really excited about the Dryads. I remember even after we watched the movie, you pulled up on the internet pictures of what the Games Workshop Dryads looked like to show me that they were very similar to the ones in the movie. And I was like, well, maybe somebody who watched or who created the Dryads for the movie was a Games Workshop 40K player. Who knows?
Fantasy.
Sorry. I don't know my gaming stuff as well as you because I don't play that game.
Fair enough. And so one of the other while we're feeling lively, I want to talk about Lisa brought home a movie called Benji the Hunted. And this movie is obviously, it's a Benji movie. It was from the 70s?
It's from 1987. It is a movie that I watched during my childhood. Can I explain what Benji is before you go into
Yes.
Okay, so Benji is a series of movies about a little scruffy terrier dog, and they're all adventures from this dog's perspective. They have no dialogue whatsoever, and they are just, they tell a story without, well, they do have some dialogue, but they tell a story through the dog's perspective, and it's like 99% of the movie has no dialogue. And it's very emotional. And it's something that I know I loved as a kid, and so I was like, I asked Nick if he'd ever seen a Benji movie, and he said no, so I was like, I need to bring a Benji movie home. And I brought one home. I brought Benji the Hunted, and I will let him tell you how he felt about Benji the Hunted.
All right, so it should be noted that Lisa and I are both dog people. And so watching dog movies, it elicits a lot of emotions. And Benji the Hunted, from my perspective, was traumatizing. So Benji ends up being like stranded on an island and is fending for himself, and he's got to deal with predators, and he ends up caring for a bunch of cougar pups that were their mother was hunted and killed, and Benji saw it. Like, Benji's like, oh, a friend, and then the cougar gets shot. This is all in the first, 10 minutes. It's like watching the Pixar movie Up. You're like, oh, this looks cute, and then that happens, and you're like, oh my god. And after that happened, you think, oh, it can't get worse than this. But Benji is just like, every moment of hope is then hit with, oh, he's being hunted by this, he's being chased by that, this horrible thing is happening. And I felt so bad for Benji the whole movie. So, Lisa, what's your take?
So I did not feel bad for Benji the whole movie. I think Benji is a hero. He's a very scruffy dog that, stands up for these cougar pups. And he sees that they're orphaned, and so he goes and takes care of them. He tries to feed them raspberries, and they're like, no, we don't want raspberries. So then he goes and steals some, chickens or some sort of ducks or birds that the hunter has hanging outside of his house so that he can feed the cougar pups. And then he, spends a good chunk of the movie trying to find another cougar mom to take the cougar pups. And so he spots this one cougar mom, and she has a pup, and so he gets it in his head that he's gonna get these pups to this mom so that she can take care of them, because throughout the whole movie we're seeing this helicopter flying overhead with his owner, and his owner's trying to look for him. But every time that the owner flies by, Benji hides because he feels like he has to get these pups a mom before he can go and be with his person again. And I just think Benji's a hero, He ultimately gets the pups a new mom. Spoiler. Sorry.
Typical.
And he, ends up, there's a happy ending, and yes, it's a story of adversity and a story of triumph and a story of doing what you can with what little you have and of being kind and compassionate to others. And so I love Benji.
It is a very sweet story, minus all of the trauma. So, let's talk about The House with the Clock in Its Walls.
Ah, yes, the Eli Roth film made for children in 2018. So, for those who don't know, Eli Roth is a director who tends to do very dark and gory horror.
Yes.
He directed, was it Hostel?
Hostel, yes.
Okay. So he made this children's movie with, I think it's Kate Blanchett, right? And Jack Black, called The House with the Clock in Its Walls. And it's a fantasy about a kid whose parents die in a car crash, and he gets sent to live with his uncle, and his uncle's a magician, and his uncle lives in this house, this magical house that has all these strange things happening in it. And I wasn't really sure what to expect from it because it's an Eli Roth film, but I guess I expect it to be a little spooky, but also entertaining because Jack Black is in it. But it ended up just being okay. What were your feelings on it?
I thought it was just okay as well. As far as would kids enjoy it? Probably. Because there's a lot of cool and weird magical type imagery. There's creepy puppets. There's the highlight was the jack-o'-lanterns outside of the house that they keep outside year round.
Those are cool. Especially when they came to life.
Yes. But overall, from an adult perspective, I think that it was just okay. If it's free, it's from the library. If you need something entertaining, your kid is already exhausted all of the Harry Potter-esque type options, or wants something a little spookier, I think it's a good choice.
Yeah, I think it's a good choice, especially if you have kids who like Goosebumps or have enjoyed some of the Goosebumps movies. It's got that kind of feel to it because it's a little creepy, but it's not super scary. There's a mystery element involved, and I'd say probably like an elementary school or like a 7, 8, 9-year-old would definitely enjoy it. I remember being into Goosebumps a lot when I was that age. So,
all right, Good Omens.
Good Omens. Oh, we didn't talk about Godzilla.
I was going to get to that.
Let's do the movies first, and then we can move on to your TV shows.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to preface this with, I was the one that asked for Godzilla. I had heard really good things about the latest Godzilla movie and was excited to check it out. This was not the latest Godzilla movie. This was the Matthew Broderick Godzilla movie.
From 1998.
From 1998. And to preface this, again, with a different preface, Godzilla was something that I loved as a child. Godzilla versus the Smog Monster, Godzilla versus Megalon, Godzilla on Monster Island, King of the Monsters. All of these movies were absolute classics to, 8-year-old, 9-year-old, 10-year-old me. And so I had heard that this newest movie was a return to something more akin to that. What the Matthew Broderick movie is, it takes elements of the Godzilla concept. It has a newly imagined look for Godzilla, and it's basically a Jurassic Park movie, but not as good. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I would agree. That last scene, or close to the end, where all the babies are hatching, I was like, this is definitely Jurassic Park. And it doesn't age well. It's one of those movies that, you can tell it was made in the 90s, and there's a lot of weird stuff that people say, a lot of vernacular that people use that we don't use anymore, a lot of, just stuff that makes you feel a little uncomfortable sometimes.
some gross sexism and that sort of thing. And one of the things that I loved about Godzilla as a kid, even though some of the earliest Godzilla movies from the 50s had Godzilla as being the villain, most of those Godzilla movies that I just referenced that I loved, Godzilla actually is the hero. Mm-hmm. And so instead of Godzilla just rampaging through Tokyo or wherever and just trashing everything, usually there was a menace like the Smog Monster or a menace like Megalon, and Godzilla had to step in to save humanity, and it allowed the monster to be the hero. Mm-hmm. And I think really gave a young me an understanding that animals can have compassion and that they're complex. Yeah. And so, yeah, it was, and with Godzilla versus the Smog Monster, I mean, there was political subtext in that. It's the Smog Monster. Uh-huh. So to me, those movies were really impactful.
Yeah, whereas this one doesn't really have any sort of messaging. It's more just an action movie. So if you just want straightforward action and you don't mind 1990s sexism or just weirdness, then you can check this one out. I accidentally grabbed it. I thought it was the new one and brought it home and then realized it wasn't, but we didn't have a lot at home to watch, so I was like, I guess we're watching this.
Yes.
And so we watched it.
And I never watched it when it came out, so now I know, and I know never to watch it again. Sorry.
Alright, so now let's move on to series. So like Nick said, we watched Good Omens, which was came out in 2019 with David Tennant and Michael Sheen. So what did you think of Good Omens? It's based off of a Terry Pratchett-Neil Gaiman collaboration book.
Yes. Okay, so things that jumped out is as soon as it started, if you've ever read Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy by Douglas Adams, it has that very, very kind of British literary comedy vibe.
Which makes sense because it's Terry Pratchett.
Yeah. And and
Neil Gaiman.
And so it's interesting in that it takes this kind of vibe. At points it's a little Monty Python-esque, but at the same time it is a story about two angels, a dark angel and a light angel, a devil or a demon and an angel, and their relationship throughout the ages leading up to the end of the world. And David Tennant?
Yeah.
Yeah. He is the whole reason to watch the series, in my opinion. Like, the series is entertaining because it's light and it's comedic. David Tennant is fantastic. At various points, like, they show him in, like, his, like, long-haired, like, rebellious devil phase, and he, like, tapped into his inner Ozzy Osbourne, and it is just fantastic. Very, very entertaining. But yeah, overall, the series, I think, was just okay for me, as far as, like, the overall, like, how the story built and culminated. But it was worth the ride just to watch David Tennant.
Whereas I really enjoyed the series, but I also am a big Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy fan, and I was also a big Monty Python fan, so if you enjoy those things, I highly recommend it. Like Nick said, it is about a demon and an angel, and they kind of form a friendship over the ages, and it's interesting because their friendship illustrates how sometimes the evil side is not all that different from the good side, and how, these two different sides are always fighting each other, but ultimately they both in the show want the same thing. They both want Armageddon to happen because it's this big war and they've been preparing for it, and it's just the way things are. But both David Tennant and Michael Sheen, their characters have become accustomed to life on Earth, and they really enjoy being among the humans, and they just want to keep doing what they're doing, and they don't want Armageddon to come. And then along the way, there's also this whole sub-story with this witch, Agnes Nutter, and so she made all these prophecies that of what was going to happen throughout the ages, like that in the 1980s you should buy an apple that's not edible and you would be wealthy, or things like that. And she passes her prophecies onto her descendants, and one of her descendants is supposed to stop Armageddon. And so her descendant is named, I think it's Anathema, and the story is also about her, and she's a really interesting and fun character as well. This was the first season, and it looks like the way that they ended it looks like they'll probably have a second season. I believe the show was made on Amazon. And if you enjoy British comedy, if you enjoy David Tennant, you should definitely check this one out. Like Nick said, David Tennant does an amazing job of being this anti-hero, and also the Michael Sheen does a pretty good job too of being this like goody two-shoes who is more concerned with himself almost than he is with anybody else. Like, he's supposed to be an angel, he's supposed to be concerned about other people, but like he cares more about like his clothing and his food and his creature comforts.
Yeah, he's more into his own personal opulence than with his requirements as being an angel. Yeah, so it's very interesting, and it brings up a lot of interesting questions, and it's cool because like Kate mentioned in a previous episode, the narrator is God, and there are these little jokes, she said, that happen in the book, and God will tell those jokes as asides during the show. And so you get all these little side jokes in there as well, which was cool. You forgot about a movie. You forgot about Beethoven.
Oh yeah, Beethoven came out in 1992, and I brought it home because it was a movie I remember enjoying as a kid. And like Nick said, we're dog people, and it's a movie about a dog. It's a Saint Bernard, and he is a puppy at the beginning in a pet store. And these villains, one of them played by Stanley Tucci and the other one played by Oliver Platt, come in to steal all these puppies for this crime ring that they're involved with. And they put them all in the back of a truck, and in the back of the truck, as they're driving, one of them gets out. It's the Jack Russell Terrier, and the Jack Russell Terrier is very smart. It opens all the cages for the other dogs, and it figures out a way to open the handle of the truck door so that both it and Beethoven can jump out.
And I will take the story from here because this is very, very important. So Beethoven, as these bumbling villains stop the truck and try to gather up all the dogs, Beethoven runs and hides in a garbage can while the Jack Russell Terrier, which is much quicker, goes bolting down the street. And of course the Jack Russell Terrier looks back at Beethoven, and Beethoven sees that, Beethoven is hidden and runs off. And so you see Beethoven end up going to sleep in this garbage can. And then in the morning, the garbage truck is coming, and you see the garbage truck, rolling up, and Beethoven wakes up and is like, oh no, and goes running out of the garbage can across a lawn as a gentleman is picking up his newspaper, and goes right in the family's house door.
Yeah, so the dog runs upstairs past the adults in the house and straight into the youngest child's bedroom. And the youngest child says to her siblings, a puppy, I dreamt I had a puppy, and here's this puppy. And so the kids all rally around, and they're like, they're all grateful because they think their dad got them a puppy, and the mom is, excited about it too. And the dad is just horrified because he thinks dogs are messy, and dogs, just create pain and suffering, and that, when the dog dies, they're gonna have to do it all over again, and the dog's gonna ruin everything. And so he doesn't want to keep the dog, but through, the pleading eyes of his children and his wife, he decides to keep it. So the story continues with this underground crime ring. We see kind of what's going on with that, and we see, the family drama unfold of the guy and his family, because it's a 90s movie, and he's more involved with work than he is with his family, and the mom's a stay-at-home mom. And
very focused, like a lot of 80s and 90s movies, very focused on success. He needs to be a successful man.
Yeah, and so he's very focused on work and not the family, and the mom gets upset, and the kids get upset because they just want him to be around for them and be focused on the family. And the dog kind of ties the family together and brings everybody together, and ultimately ends up bringing the dad in to be a part of everything too later on in the movie. And we find out why the dad was anti-dog eventually. But I won't spoil it.
Yes. Do not spoil it.
But there's this underlying story at the same time that's happening. There's this crime syndicate, and there's this evil veterinarian, and he's doing testing on animals, and he wants a big dog so that he can test this ammunition. And so he tries to find a Saint Bernard or a big dog like that so that he can perform his tests. And so he, enacts this plan of how he's going to get Beethoven. And I won't say anything more about that because I would definitely spoil it. But it's a very hard.
I'm on the edge. Was on the edge of my seat, waiting for the spoilers to start just unleashing. But continue.
But it's a very heartwarming movie. It is, a little dated from the 90s, but not as dated as Godzilla was. And dated in a different way. Not dated in an icky way, but just dated in a things were thought of differently. There
were a couple of scenes, like there is a scene where the mom is like, he's trying to like bring his wife back into the business. She had worked as part of his business before they had kids, and he was trying to like get her to go back to work with him. And there's a scene with him and David Duchovny and somebody else, and he wants her to be a part of this negotiation, and she just gets snubbed at every turn, and you're just like, very. Yeah, but other than that, there's less of that sort of dynamic than in Godzilla, which is really
So it's a fun family movie if you like dogs. No dogs ultimately get hurt. It's and it has a happy ending. And Beethoven is very lovable, even though he's very slimy.
Yes, slobbers on everything, which is part of the children's entertainment aspect of it.
Yeah, the film was, I think it was either written or directed by Ivan Reitman, and so there's definitely a lot of like slime from the Ghostbusters that you see flying around when the dad's picking up shoes or when Beethoven's shaking himself off or things like that. But yeah, so those are the things that we've been watching. We tried to stick to mostly light stuff just because everything's been so heavy lately, and that's just what we felt like watching. So if you're interested in something light, these are some things that we, recommend, other than maybe Godzilla. But if you really want to watch Godzilla, if you're in the mood, because I know sometimes I'm in the mood to watch, I just want to watch a bad movie because it'll make me laugh. And sometimes, that's okay. So if you want to just watch a bad movie,
get Pacific Rim instead, or some movie with giant robots. Like if you're in the mood for like giant monsters or giant robots, go with Pacific Rim or something like that instead. Virtual events.
Join Miss Heidi on Facebook on Tuesdays for Rhyme Time Tuesday. Share some of your favorite finger rhymes, lap bounces, and clapping games with your little ones. Art Cart Online. We know you miss our weekly art cart, and we miss you. Every Wednesday, Miss Susan posts instructions for fun art projects you can make at home. Check our calendar and social media pages for instructions.
This podcast is available for streaming on iTunes, Spotify, and Podbean. If you have any questions or comments for the hosts, email us at shorewoodstacks@gmail.com. Until next week, thanks for listening, and be well.
The Shorewood Stacks is produced by Lisa Quintero and Nick Barron, with music by Kevin MacLeod. The title of this song is Ice Flow and can be found on incompetech.com.